Our story begins in 1968 in New York City. This guy is giving away turkeys on Thanksgiving. Do you know why? Because he's a gangster. Bumpy Johnson is a big boss in Harlem organized crime. Stuff like this is what makes people loyal to him and avoid snitching. But now Bumpy is getting old and bitter. He complains about the economy to his loyal driver, Frank Lucas. Big chains are cutting the middlemen to drop their prices, and the small family businesses won't stand a chance. Bumpy says that's not fair. And then he has a heart attack in a department store. Ironic, right? This other guy has a different problem. Richie Roberts is one of the few clean cops in New Jersey. So when he finds about $1 million in unmarked bills, he doesn't keep a penny for himself. His partner Jay warns him that this is not just stupid, it can be dangerous. Turning in that kind of money is undeniable proof of his honesty. If all the other cops are dirty, they're bound to see him as a snitch in the making from now on. From the frowning faces at the station, we can see Jay wasn't totally wrong. Their boss Lou tells them to stop counting in front of everyone, and as they leave, Richie can hear someone calling them Boy Scouts. Yikes. Back to Harlem. It's been a while since Bumpy died, and the scene is beginning to change. Frank Lucas is a drug lord himself now. At breakfast, a gangster named Tango comes to bother him about his share. Frank says 20% is almost as much as his own profit. If he gives him that, he'll be drug lording for free. That should be, like, illegal, right? News about the Vietnam War says there's been more and more incidents of substance abuse among American soldiers. Drugs are too pure and too cheap over there. Now that turns a light switch in Frank's mind, especially because he knows somebody in Bangkok. His cousin Nate owns a nightclub named Soul Brothers. Next thing you know, Frank is getting himself a passport. In New Jersey, Richie is apologizing to his ex-wife Lori for yet another missed event. She says she'll move to Las Vegas with their son since he never sees the kid anyway. He tries to talk her out of it, but she says she'll see him in court. Frank arrives in Bangkok and goes straight to the Soul Brothers. People are just surprised to see him, as we are to find out that Nate is white. They clarify they're not actual cousins, and then Frank cuts the small talk right away. He's here to make a large purchase, 100 kilos. Nate says that's an insane amount and he'll need multiple sources. But Frank says no. He wants to get it from the same place where these guys are buying it from. Just cut the middleman and take control of the entire operation. He learned from Bumpy what happens to the small shop on the corner, so he doesn't want to be that guy. Nate says that's even more insane because it means going into the jungle and dealing with the syndicate guys. Frank can be very persistent though. And he wants it even more now that it's so evident that Nate is getting rich without doing much. Soon they are both going down the river into the heart of the jungle. General Chiang Kai-shek is the man in charge here. He's extremely suspicious of this guy nobody ever heard of placing a huge order like that. But a huge sale is still a sale, so now they are Soul Brothers. Frank leaves the country having spent all his money, so he says goodbye to his cousin with a warning. His order better get to New York. Nate says he'll let him know once it's been shipped. Back to New Jersey. Richie gets a call in the middle of the night. Jay is in deep trouble. He's at the Harlem Projects for an investigation, but something went wrong and he had to fire his gun. Lots of people heard the shots, and now he's trapped with his victim inside the apartment, afraid of a possible lynching. Richie calls for backup while driving there, but dispatch tells him there's no units in the area. He suspects there never is. Getting there, Richie makes his way across the angry crowd, waving his badge as a lightsaber. The paramedics are in the room with Jay and the victim, so Richie has a wild idea. He has them clean up the boy and put on some bandages. The body leaves the room disguised as a patient, and they tell everyone they're taking him to the hospital. In the ambulance, Richie asks what the hell Jay was doing there. Jay swears it was police work and keeps repeating that this was self-defense, but Richie doesn't buy that version. Jay has become a junkie himself and was actually trying to rob that boy. He says this is all Richie's fault. He's made them both pariahs by returning that money. So the least he can do is to write a nice report now, clearing Jay of any fault. Richie firmly refuses, so Jay jumps out of the moving ambulance and vanishes. Meanwhile, Frank's order is getting to the US just fine. He has an expert to test the product, and the man is astonished at the purity. He says it's typically 45% at best, while this one is the closest to 100% he has ever seen. So now it's all hands on deck to put that baby in the market. Labeled as Blue Magic, it soon becomes a synonym of high quality and guaranteed results. A few days later, Richie gets another phone call, this time at an even more inconvenient moment. A detective tells him that Jay is dead. Richie goes to the morgue and provides a positive ID on him. He also picks up a small paper wrapper labeled as Blue Magic. Right after that, Lou has a chat with him about his situation. Everyone is still giving him the cold shoulder, and that's not fair. He did the right thing. He should be seen as a hero. As you can imagine, this guy wants something now. He needs someone to lead a new narcotics division in New Jersey. He tells Richie he can pick his own team, never set foot in the station again, work flexible hours, etc. Sounds like an online scam, but this is in the 60s, so he should be fine. Frank calls up his brother Huey in North Carolina, who struggles to understand who Frank is. But when he finally does, he shouts to the whole farm that Frank is on the phone. It seems like they haven't heard of him for ages. And that's about to change radically, as the entire Lucas family arrives in the high-end residential area where Frank bought a huge property. When he points at the house and tells his mom she'll live there, she asks him who else will move in. The house is completely over the top and has plenty of room, but the Lucas family is a decent match to that in terms of number of people. It's a very happy family gathering, and Mama Lucas is over the moon to see them all together. In her bedroom, she gasps to see the exact same furniture that was taken away from her decades ago. Frank drew it from memory and had it especially made for her. At the same time, Richie is with Agent Spearman. They are putting a team together. Spearman recommends Jones, who's great undercover, and Abruzzo, who might have a bit of a temper but can be fully trusted. Spearman says they are a trio, and the other two have to come if he does. Now it's time for Frank to tell his brothers what kind of business he's actually in. He takes them to the Blue Magic factory in the projects. No secrets, no lies. Over lunch, they discuss how to incorporate the brothers into the organization. That's when Tango shows up again. He hasn't paid for his share of Blue Magic yet, so Frank decides to have a word. Maybe a gun to his forehead can help him think clearly. As usual, Tango refuses to take anything seriously and makes sure to be as annoying as possible. What's Frank gonna do about it? In front of all these people? Pull the trigger. That's what he does. Then, he calmly collects his money and dutifully returns Tango's 20%. The Essex County Narcotics Squad is official now. Their targets are the big bosses, which means large sums are involved. That's precisely why the team is formed by this bunch of losers. These are all the clean cops that have been rejected by their not-so-clean peers. It doesn't take long before they have a chance to test some Blue Magic. Amazed at the results, they wonder who's behind the new stuff and how he manages to sell a product twice as good for half as much. At the nightclub, Frank meets a drug dealer named Nicky Barnes, who seems to be the best candidate to take Tango's position as troublemaker number one. While discussing Nicky with his brother, Frank disapproves of his flashy clothes and attention-seeking style. But for the first time, he has eyes for something other than business, and that would be Eva, this year's Miss Puerto Rico. One look at her and Frank can see this is what his league should look like now. Eva seems as happy as he is with the acquaintance and lets him walk her to the table. At the narcotics squad, Richie has some good news for a change. Having passed the bar exams, he can also call himself a lawyer now. With that confidence boost, he tells the team that their board is all wrong. No one they've pinned there is a key player for real. They must take it all down and start over from the streets. And that's how they actually pick up some action and get to snap a few photos of a large delivery at a car wash. Then, Jones calls them up and places a fake order. Richie is given $20,000, with a warning that he won't see that kind of money again if he fails to return every penny. He takes it to the car wash and specifically asks for Blue Magic. He's told to come back tomorrow to pick it up. So the trap is set now. Richie and Spearman follow that guy as soon as he leaves and end up crossing state lines into New York. Richie sees the money going to the hands of Detective Trudeau and his pals. Realizing the kind of pickle he might be in, he hurries to show them his badge and warn about the cash. The bills are sequenced and registered with the county. The dirty cops have no choice but to give it back, but Trudeau makes sure to let Richie know he is not welcome in the city. He tells him to go back to New Jersey, stay there, and mind his own business. Of course, he'll do no such thing. He tells his boss that Blue Magic is coming from New York. Lou says Richie is free to investigate in any way and anywhere he wishes, as long as he never involves Lou or asks for permission again. At Frank's mansion, there's a party going on. His cousin Jimmy invited a dirty cop who's taking the gangster jokes a bit too far. Losing his temper, Jimmy fires a gun at him. The man is hit in the leg, and the party's over. Frank takes a moment to discipline Jimmy in a musical way, and then kicks everyone out. Sometime after that, Frank and Eva are invited over by Dominic Catano, a mob hotshot from Kansas City. Impressed by Frank's finesse in quietly overtaking the entire New York market, he wants to propose a partnership and go national. As they leave that tacky place, Eva says she hates the way those people look at them as if they were the help. Frank laughs at the idea and clarifies that those people now work for him. Now we're in 1971, and it's the night of the legendary Adderley versus Frazier fight. Everyone is there. Frank was planning to wear one of his identical suits to the event, but he can't say no to a gift from Eva. And just like he has always feared, that fur coat ends up drawing lots of unwanted attention. Both Detective Trudeau and Richie Roberts are curious about that guy in expensive fur with amazing seats. Richie pays attention to every hand he shakes and writes down the limo plate to check with the rental company. A few weeks later, Frank marries Eva in a traditional ceremony. Their newlywed car is stopped by Detective Trudeau, who rudely informs the groom about the monthly fee he seems to be dodging. Frank replies that he's never missed a payment to the chief of police. But that's not what Trudeau is talking about. Shoving the badge in his face, Trudeau says he's in the special unit. That means he is special and deserves a special piece of the pie. When they get home, Frank not only fails to carry Eva through the door, he runs upstairs to fetch the fur coat and throws it in the fire. But she won't be the only one to have a happy day ruined. Trudeau's Thanksgiving surprise from Frank makes his beloved car go up in flames. Later on, Huey comes to Frank with a problem related to Nicky Barnes. He's been diluting the Blue Magic to less than 5% purity to maximize his own profits. Frank stops by his club to explain the concept of branding. You can't water it down and still call it Blue Magic. That can ruin the whole brand. Nicky says he'll change the name, but they don't really part ways on good terms. Christmas time is here now. Eva is upset at Frank's constant paranoia. He doesn't take her anywhere these days. So they go out for dinner, and there's an attack. Frank is hit in the arm. The Lucas family is quickly gathered, but not knowing if this is Trudeau or Barnes, they can't even retaliate. Frank presses Dominic for more protection. He agrees but says he must get used to this kind of thing. Success will always come with enemies, but it still beats the alternative. And now there's another problem, and a much bigger one. The war is about to end. Cousin Nate says the last U.S. plane will leave the area very soon. So Frank flies to Bangkok again to set up some new transportation for his product. Meanwhile, during a stakeout, Jones and Spearman witness cousin Jimmy fire his gun at a woman. Looking at 15 years for attempted murder, Jimmy has no choice. but to cooperate with the narcotics squad. When Frank calls his brother from Bangkok, Jimmy is right next to him, and Richie gets every word, including the plane tail number. While the squad is getting a warrant for the plane, Trupo wastes no time with such formalities. He trashes Frank's house and grabs his getaway money, telling Eva that their whole lifestyle is about to end. Richie's team is tearing the plane to pieces, but the military draws a line when he tries to open the coffins. Even Lou gets in trouble for that, and his superior doesn't buy their story about a black guy who's above the mafia in the drug scene all of a sudden. While Lou and Richie are getting an earful about disrespecting American soldiers, Spearman follows the coffins. Richie catches up with him as soon as he can. The bodies have been transferred to the ceremonial coffins, but the transportation ones are picked up by a shady truck. And guess who's driving it? Stevie Lucas, Frank's nephew. Richie was right, obviously. The dope was in a false bottom of the caskets. Frank is at church with his mom and Eva when the squad invades his floor at the South Tower of the Harlem Projects. There's a massive shootout, and Huey is arrested. When the service is over, Frank walks out of the church to an almost empty street. The entire block has been closed by the police, and dozens of officers are waiting for him. Jones and Abruzzo politely ask the women to get back inside and close the door. Once he's arrested, Frank tries bribery first, but of course that won't work with the man who once turned in $1 million. Richie says he wants much more than money. Frank immediately goes, "Say no more," and starts naming other drug lords and mob bosses. Richie says he'll take these people gladly, but that's not what he really wants. Even Frank is shocked when he realizes Richie wants the dirty cops. That's one of the very few things he is prepared to do just for fun. So they team up together and start the biggest sweep in DEA history. More than half of the New York agency goes down. And of course, Frank makes sure to inform that Detective Trupo is special. Frank was released in 1991, thanks to his defense attorney Richie Roberts. He's appalled to learn that coffee with milk is now called a latte. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2007 movie American Gangster by TSG Entertainment, starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. So, are you Team Richie or Team Frank? Let us know in the comments below with #CineAmericap. Until next time.